crime occurred in Lancaster County that shocked the locals. The story of an ordinary family turned into a crime drama where personal relationships collided with fatal circumstances. The case of Derek Coleman will be that rare case that destroys the stereotype about the well-being of a provincial town. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, situated in Lancaster County, experienced significant suburban expansion in 2019, with numerous residential construction projects transforming the landscape. Among the city's workforce was Derek Coleman, a 38-year-old construction worker employed by Blackwell Construction, a prominent local building company. Coleman was recognized within his professional community for his exceptional physical capabilities and consistent work performance. Standing approximately 6 feet 2 inches and weighing around 215 pounds, he possessed the physical strength typical of experienced construction laborers. His work history revealed a consistent pattern of employment, having worked in construction for over 15 years, with the last 7 years spent at Blackwell Construction. Derek's family consisted of his wife, Tasha Coleman, 35, and their 2 daughters, Jada, aged 10, and Kayla, aged 7. The family resided at 1247 Maple Grove Road, a modest 3-bedroom home partially constructed by Derek himself, a point of personal pride that demonstrated his professional skills and commitment to providing for his family. Tasha Coleman worked part-time at Sweet Delights Bakery, located in downtown Lancaster, employed for approximately 20 hours per week. Her social interactions were primarily limited to workplace colleagues and her longtime friend Angela Mitchell, 37, who lived in the same neighborhood. Mitchell was a school administrative assistant and had known Tasha for approximately 8 years. The dynamics of the Coleman household began showing signs of strain by mid-2019. Derek's employment required him to work extended hours, often leaving home before sunrise and returning after sunset. His role as a construction worker involved not just manual labor, but also increasing responsibilities in project management and site coordination. Tasha's growing sense of dissatisfaction stemmed from multiple factors. The repetitive nature of her part-time bakery job, combined with limited social interactions and the responsibility of primarily managing household and childcare duties, created a sense of monotony. Her conversations with Angela Mitchell frequently centered around her feelings of being emotionally unfulfilled and her desire for more excitement in her life. Victor Blackwell, the 42-year-old foreman at Blackwell Construction, represented a significant turning point in Tasha's personal narrative. Blackwell was not just a typical construction manager but a well-connected individual with substantial social capital. His professional reputation was built on effective leadership, strategic project management, and an extensive network of affluent connections. Blackwell's personal residence, located at 752 Oakwood Drive on the outskirts of Lancaster, was a testament to his financial success. The 5,600-square-foot property, valued at approximately $1.2 million, frequently hosted gatherings that attracted Lancaster's professional and entrepreneurial elite. These events were known for their sophisticated atmosphere and selective guest list. The initial interaction between Tasha and Victor occurred during a routine lunch delivery to a construction site where Derek was working. Victor's sophisticated demeanor, professional appearance, and articulate communication style presented a stark contrast to the day-to-day environment Tasha was accustomed to. His invitations to exclusive social gatherings represented an escape from her routine existence. Derek remained unaware of the developing dynamic between his wife and his professional superior. His focus remained on maintaining consistent employment and providing financial stability for his family. The construction industry's demanding nature meant that his attention was predominantly directed toward work responsibilities, inadvertently creating space for the emerging personal connection between Tasha and Victor. By June 2019, observable changes in Tasha Coleman's behavioral patterns began to emerge, raising suspicions within her immediate social circle. Her personal presentation underwent a notable transformation, characterized by more sophisticated clothing choices and increased attention to personal grooming. Financial records would later reveal additional expenses for designer accessories and high-end clothing from boutiques in downtown Lancaster. Communication patterns also shifted substantially. Phone records obtained during subsequent investigations showed increased late-night text message exchanges, and prolonged phone calls with numbers registered to Victor Blackwell. These communications typically occurred during hours when Derek was working evening shifts or attending job site meetings. Angela Mitchell, Tasha's closest confidant, became increasingly concerned about the evolving situation. On July 12, 2019, Mitchell directly confronted Tasha about her relationship with Victor Blackwell during a private conversation at Sweet Delights Bakery. Witness statements indicate that Tasha became defensive, dismissing Mitchell's concerns and asserting her right to personal happiness. The critical moment of discovery occurred on the evening of August 15, 2019. A sudden rainstorm had interrupted construction work at the Oaks development project, causing Derek Coleman to return home earlier than his typical schedule. Weather records from the Lancaster Meteorological Station confirmed heavy precipitation between 5:30 p.m. and 7:45 p.m. that evening. Upon arriving home at approximately 6:15 p.m., Derek discovered an empty house. His daughters, Jet and Kayla, were not present, later confirmed to be staying with Angela Mitchell. Tasha was unreachable by phone, with her cellular device appearing to be either turned off or outside of service range. A casual conversation with Robert Jenkins, a fellow construction worker, revealed that Victor Blackwell was hosting one of his recurring social gatherings that same evening. This information prompted Derek to drive to Blackwell's residence, located at 752 Oakwood Drive. The property, a 5,600 square foot modern estate, was illuminated and audibly active with music and conversation. Through the large floor-to-ceiling windows, Derek observed an intimate scene, Tasha and Victor in close proximity. Engaged in what appeared to be a deeply personal interaction, witnesses would later describe their body language as suggestive of an intimate relationship beyond professional boundaries. Faced with this overwhelming evidence of potential betrayal, Derek chose not to immediately confront the pair. Instead, he retreated to the residence of Marcus Hill, a 45-year-old veteran construction worker employed by Blackwell Construction and considered Derek's closest professional confidant. Hill's residence, located at 1189 Elm Street, became the site of an emotionally charged conversation. Derek detailed his observations, describing the scene he had witnessed with a mix of anger and emotional devastation. Marcus Hill, drawing from his extensive life experience, attempted to counsel Derek toward a measured response. Psychological evaluations conducted later would reveal that this moment represented a critical turning point in Derek Coleman's emotional state. The combination of perceived betrayal, professional humiliation, and personal vulnerability created a volatile psychological environment. Marcus Hill's attempts to calm Derek and encourage rational thinking appeared ineffective. Forensic psychologists would later analyze this interaction as a pivotal moment where Derek's emotional responses began to deviate from typical conflict resolution patterns. Forensic and investigative evidence would later reconstruct the sequence of events with meticulous precision. Derek Coleman's psychological state was characterized by intense emotional volatility. Workplace interviews and psychological assessments conducted during the subsequent investigation revealed a man experiencing profound psychological turmoil. The betrayal witnessed the previous evening had transformed his emotional landscape from hurt to uncontrolled rage. Coleman's professional background provided critical context to understanding his psychological state. As a construction worker with 15 years of experience, he was accustomed to physical labor that required controlled strength and precision. His work history showed a consistent record of reliability and professional competence. Colleagues described him as methodical, patient, and typically even-tempered, characteristics that made the eventual violent outbreak all the more shocking. The sledgehammer retrieved from his work truck was not just a tool but an extension of his professional identity. Craftsman professional-grade 10-pound sledgehammers were standard equipment for heavy construction work, used for breaking concrete, driving stakes, and demolishing structures. The irony was not lost on investigators that an instrument designed for controlled destruction would become a weapon of personal vengeance. Victor Blackwell's residence stood as a symbol of his professional success. The 5,600 square foot property on Oakwood Drive represented more than just a home. It was a physical manifestation of his social status and professional achievements. The house, valued at approximately $1.2 million, featured advanced security systems, expansive living spaces, and large floor-to-ceiling windows that had inadvertently become witnesses to the impending tragedy. Neighbor testimonies would later reveal that Blackwell's properties were known for hosting exclusive social gatherings. These events were carefully curated, attracting Lancaster's professional and entrepreneurial elite. The very lifestyle that had attracted Tasha Coleman would become the backdrop of her final moments. The interior of the residence told a story of calculated sophistication. High-end furnishings, contemporary art pieces, and meticulously arranged spaces reflected Blackwell's persona, a man who valued appearance and social perception. These carefully constructed spaces would soon be transformed into a crime scene that would shock the Lancaster community. Physical evidence suggested a swift and brutal confrontation. The lack of extended struggle indicated a moment of unexpected violence. Blackwell, despite his professional reputation and physical fitness, had little opportunity to defend himself. Tasha's presence complicated the dynamics, turning a potential confrontation into an immediate fatal encounter. The aftermath of the murders extended beyond the physical crime scene. Coleman's subsequent actions, fleeing the scene, contacting his colleague Marcus Hill, and avoiding immediate surrender, revealed the complex psychological landscape of a man grappling with his actions. Forensic experts would later analyze not just the physical evidence but also the broader context of personal and professional relationships that led to this moment. The murders represented more than a simple act of violence. They were a catastrophic intersection of personal betrayal, professional proximity, and uncontrolled emotional response. The Lancaster County legal system would be tasked with untangling the complex motivations behind Coleman's actions. Was this a momentary loss of control or a calculated act of revenge? The forensic and psychological evidence would become crucial in determining legal culpability. The community impact would be significant. The murders challenged Lancaster's perception of domestic stability and workplace relationships. Blackwell Construction, a prominent local business, would face scrutiny and potential reputational damage. The Coleman family would be forever altered, with 2 children left to understand a tragedy that defied simple explanation. Detective Monique Harris, a 17-year veteran of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, was assigned as the lead investigator. Her professional background included extensive experience in homicide investigations, with a particular reputation for meticulous evidence gathering and psychological profiling. Harris had successfully solved 87% of her assigned homicide cases throughout her career, a statistic that would prove crucial in the Coleman-Blackwell investigation. The initial crime scene presented a stark tableau of violence. Forensic teams meticulously documented the evidence, beginning with the primary piece of physical evidence, a Craftsman professional-grade sledgehammer covered in biological material. Preliminary blood spatter analysis suggested extreme violence, with multiple impact points indicating a sustained and intentional attack. Forensic pathology reports would later confirm the brutal nature of the murders. Both victims, Victor Blackwell and Tasha Coleman, suffered multiple traumatic injuries. Consistent with repeated blunt force trauma, the medical examiner's report noted that death was essentially instantaneous, with massive cranial and thoracic injuries. Detective Harris's investigative approach was systematic and comprehensive. She began by creating a detailed network of relationships surrounding the victims. Victor Blackwell's professional and social circles were extensively mapped. As the foreman of Blackwell Construction, he maintained a significant network of professional and social connections throughout Lancaster County. Interviews with Blackwell's colleagues revealed a complex professional persona. While respected as a business leader, Blackwell was described as ambitious and personally charismatic. Multiple sources noted his tendency to blur professional and personal boundaries, a characteristic that would become significant in understanding the events leading to the murders. Angela Mitchell emerged as a critical witness. Her long-standing friendship with Tasha Coleman provided unprecedented insight into the deteriorating marital dynamics. Mitchell's testimony detailed Tasha's increasing dissatisfaction with her marriage and her growing relationship with Victor Blackwell. These statements would become crucial in establishing the psychological context of the crime. Marcus Hill's involvement presented a complex investigative challenge. His reluctant admission of Derek Coleman's confession, coupled with his apparent lack of knowledge about Coleman's whereabouts, raised significant investigative questions. Hill's statements suggested a complex loyalty that extended beyond professional boundaries. The discovery of Coleman's abandoned truck became a pivotal moment in the investigation. Located in a parking lot on the outskirts of Lancaster, the vehicle provided critical forensic evidence. Blood traces on the steering wheel, confirmed through DNA analysis, directly linked Coleman to the crime scene. A comprehensive manhunt was initiated, involving multiple law enforcement agencies. Coleman's photograph was distributed through local and state media channels, and a formal arrest warrant was issued for double homicide. The Lancaster County Sheriff's Office collaborated with state police to expand the search parameters. The investigation simultaneously explored multiple tracks. Forensic teams analyzed trace evidence from the crime scene. Financial investigators examined the professional and personal relationships between Blackwell, Coleman, and Tasha. Psychological profilers began constructing a comprehensive understanding of the events leading to the murders. Coleman's background underwent intense scrutiny. Workplace records, personal history, and psychological assessments were compiled to create a comprehensive profile. The goal was to understand not just the act of violence but the complex personal and emotional landscape that precipitated it. The Lancaster County Prosecutor's Office began preparing for potential legal proceedings. The evidence collection phase was critical, with every detail meticulously documented. The complexity of the case, involving workplace dynamics, marital infidelity, and extreme violence, required an unprecedented level of investigative thoroughness. The manhunt continued. With law enforcement confident that Coleman's eventual capture was only a matter of time, the investigation had transformed from a crime scene analysis to a comprehensive examination of human relationships, betrayal, and the catastrophic consequences of unchecked emotional turbulence. The culmination of the three-day manhunt occurred at the Sunrise Motel, located on Route 30, approximately 50 miles west of Lancaster. The motel, a dilapidated establishment typical of rural Pennsylvania highway routes, became the site of Derek Coleman's surrender. Law enforcement surveillance had been methodically tracking potential locations based on cellular tower data, financial transactions, and intelligence gathered from Coleman's known social network. The Lancaster County Sheriff's Special Operations Unit, led by Detective Monique Harris, had been coordinating a multi-agency effort to locate the suspect. Coleman's capture was notable for its lack of dramatic confrontation. When tactical team members approached room 17 of the Sunrise Motel, they found Coleman seemingly prepared for apprehension. Surveillance logs and officer statements would later describe his demeanor as resigned and emotionally exhausted. The physical condition of Derek Coleman reflected the psychological toll of the preceding days. Weight loss, evident beard growth, and signs of minimal personal care suggested a man who had been living in a state of extreme psychological distress. Forensic psychologists would later analyze this period as a critical breakdown of personal coping mechanisms. Interrogation protocols were meticulously followed. Coleman was transported to the Lancaster County Detention Center, where a comprehensive interview process began. Detective Monique Harris, known for her precision in criminal interviews, took the lead in questioning. The initial phase of interrogation focused on establishing a comprehensive narrative. Coleman's confession was detailed, providing insights into the complex emotional landscape that led to the murders. He described the discovery of the affair, his feelings of betrayal, and the moment of violent confrontation with elaborate psychological detail. Forensic interview techniques revealed critical psychological patterns. Coleman's narrative consistently emphasized emotional betrayal over calculated revenge. He portrayed himself as a man overwhelmed by a sudden, uncontrollable emotional response rather than a premeditated murderer. Forensic evidence presented a more complex picture. The selection and use of the sledgehammer, a specific work tool brought from his professional environment, suggested a level of deliberation that contradicted Coleman's claims of pure spontaneity. Ballistics and forensic experts noted the precision of the attacks, which seemed to challenge the narrative of an uncontrolled emotional outburst. The interrogation explored multiple dimensions of the crime. Investigators were particularly interested in understanding the timeline of events, the decision to bring the sledgehammer, and the specific moments leading to the fatal confrontation. Coleman's responses were meticulously documented, with forensic psychologists analyzing both verbal and nonverbal communication. Medical and psychological assessments became a critical component of the investigation. Experts evaluated Coleman's mental state, exploring potential underlying psychological conditions, stress factors, and the cumulative impact of personal and professional pressures that might have contributed to the violent episode. The legal team from the Lancaster County Prosecutor's Office began preparing for potential trial proceedings. Coleman's confession, while detailed, would require extensive corroboration. The complexity of the case demanded a comprehensive approach that extended beyond simple criminal prosecution. Coleman's family background became a subject of intense investigation. Childhood records, family history, and previous behavioral patterns were examined to provide context for the violent episode. The goal was to understand not just the act itself, but the broader psychological and social factors that could have contributed to such a catastrophic breakdown. The interrogation process revealed the intricate nature of human emotional response. Coleman's narrative existed in a complex space between calculated action and emotional overwhelm. The sledgehammer, a tool of his professional identity, had become an instrument of personal destruction, symbolizing the catastrophic intersection of professional and personal life. The legal proceedings against Derek Coleman commenced in the Lancaster County Court of Common Pleas during January 2023, marking a critical moment in a case that had captivated the local community. The trial represented more than a simple criminal prosecution. It was a complex exploration of personal betrayal, emotional volatility, and the legal boundaries of justifiable emotional response. The prosecution, led by Senior Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Steinberg, constructed a methodical case emphasizing premeditation. Their strategy focused on several key elements: Coleman's deliberate choice of weapons, his purposeful journey to Victor Blackwell's residence, and the calculated nature of the violent confrontation. Forensic evidence played a crucial role, with expert witnesses detailing the precision of the attacks and the specific selection of the sledgehammer, a tool that suggested more than spontaneous rage. Forensic psychologists provided critical testimony about Coleman's mental state. Their evaluations revealed a complex psychological profile, a man with a historically stable professional and personal demeanor who had experienced a catastrophic emotional breakdown. The experts discussed the cumulative impact of perceived betrayal, professional humiliation, and personal loss. The defense, led by Gerald Thompson, a veteran criminal defense attorney with 25 years of experience, pursued a strategy of emotional contextualization. They portrayed Coleman not as a calculated murderer but as a family man pushed beyond psychological endurance. Character witnesses were strategically selected to highlight Coleman's typical behavior. Marcus Hill's testimony became a pivotal moment in the trial. As Coleman's closest work colleague, Hill provided nuanced insights into Coleman's professional character. He described a man known for emotional restraint, consistent work ethic, and deep commitment to family, characteristics that made the violent episode seem deeply out of character. Angela Mitchell's testimony offered a detailed account of the marital tensions preceding the murders. She explained Tasha's growing dissatisfaction, Victor Blackwell's manipulative social tactics, and the gradual erosion of the Coleman marriage. Her narrative provided critical context for understanding the emotional landscape that preceded the violent confrontation. Forensic evidence presented a complex narrative. While the defense argued for a moment of uncontrolled emotional response, the prosecution highlighted the calculated elements of the crime. The sledgehammer selection, the specific route taken to Blackwell's residence, and the nature of the attacks suggested a level of deliberation that challenged claims of pure spontaneity. After 5 weeks of testimony, the jury began deliberations. The complexity of the case was reflected in extended discussions that lasted nearly 3 days. On February 17, 2023, the jury returned a verdict of guilty of second-degree murder, rejecting the possibility of first-degree murder but acknowledging the intentional nature of Coleman's actions. The sentencing phase reflected the nuanced understanding of the case. Judge Elizabeth Martinez sentenced Coleman to 25 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Her statement emphasized the tragic nature of the case, a moment of catastrophic emotional failure that destroyed multiple lives. The aftermath of the trial extended beyond the legal proceedings. Jada and Kayla Coleman, now orphaned, found stability through Angela Mitchell's intervention. Mitchell, who had been a consistent support system for the family, became their legal guardian, ensuring continuity and emotional support during a traumatic transition. Victor Blackwell's estate, a symbol of his professional success, was liquidated. The proceeds were partially used to establish a trust for Blackwell's extended family and partially directed toward victim support programs in Lancaster County. The professional reputation of Blackwell Construction underwent significant scrutiny. An internal investigation revealed systemic issues with workplace boundaries and professional conduct, leading to management restructuring and enhanced ethical training protocols. Forensic and legal experts would later use the Coleman case as a significant study in emotional violence, workplace dynamics, and the complex interplay of personal and professional relationships. Academic papers and legal journals would analyze the case as a nuanced exploration of human emotional response under extreme psychological pressure.